Hello, my friends. We are live once again. Fred Hampton Leftists, Social Cinema. We had a great roundtable yesterday. That was pretty fun. We talked about a wide variety of topics, including a lot of foreign policy talk. That's pretty much my lane on Fred Hampton Leftists. I host the International Leftist Coalition panel. Uh, one second. So I'm happy that I have this guest here with us. It's now Jeb. I had to fix my audio, but I'm happy to have Jeb on today because he was speaking real truth to power, and he was calling out someone that, if you watch Fred Hampton Leftists, we have been sick of the rehabilitation of George Bush. So Jeb actually called him out to his face. So welcome to Fred Hampton Leftists. We got Jeb on with us. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Nick. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Whenever I have someone on the show for a first time, I always want to make sure we have a good idea of your perspective. And obviously, you are speaking truth to power to a war criminal like George Bush. And that's why I was interested in having this conversation in the first place. It's insane to me that people take this guy who is an extreme war criminal, who is responsible for everything that they hate about Donald Trump. Like he set the groundwork for all that. He had literally a torture program. It doesn't get worse than George Bush. So tell us about your background. What led you to this event, and why was you so passionate to speak truth to power to George Bush? Floor is your Jeb.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me, Nick. It's great to be on your show, named after one of the most important American revolutionaries in our country's history. And basically, really, when I sort of woke up to what was going on and got interested in politics was about the time that the war was starting, the Iraq War, and going to giant protests in Los Angeles. I remember they were just humongous, the protests. And when I was an undergrad in college in the early 2000s, we formed in Long Beach. There was a group called the Long Beach Peace Area Network, and that was sort of like, where I learned about activism, right? Where we had people from across the city. It kind of started on the college campus, but it sort of spread out in the community, in different communities in Long Beach. And we would have protests every Friday for I think for 5 years or something. And and just seeing the dedication, and the tough thing about it was always that it was mostly older people. It was mostly people, that had been around in the 60s and doing activism. And it was always tough to get, there were a lot of young people that would come out to the huge demonstrations in LA, but that's what I was so inspired about now, these protests against Bush and some other I went to an anti-sanctions, anti-embargo protest in DC, I think that was a year and a half ago. And just so many people, the Answer Coalition, just all these different groups that were out there, Veterans Against War, the Black Alliance for Peace, or all these different groups. I don't remember all their names correctly, but there was just so many people that came out, and young people. And
well, you said a lot of those people that came out you mentioned was older, right?
Well, from my earlier experience doing anti-war activism, there were just a lot. It was a lot of older people, and so that's what I'm noticing now. Is there's so many younger people that are involved in it, which is great, because that means it's going to continue and it's going to grow.
What's very interesting? I see this pattern where we have an entire generation that roots against U.S. imperialism. Whenever you see a country successfully resist U.S. Imperialism, that's something that we love to see here. And that's the message that we want to bring at Fred Hampton Leftists, because a lot of people forget that the Black Panthers was a very international conscious organization where they stood up for the Palestinian people. So we dropped a video you guys should check out today where we were talking about the Squad Iron Dome vote, and I got pretty fired up. You guys saw how passionate we are about that, because there's been a long history of solidarity between figures like Nelson Mandela, the Black Panthers, and the Palestinian people. They even have a George Floyd mural in Palestine as well on the Gaza Strip. So that just shows the solidarity between our people, and that's what we want to bring forward. And our generation really understands that, and that's what that also shows the fact that you see a lot of young people now that organize in war, right, Jeb?
Mm-hmm. And people from different backgrounds, from different neighborhoods. And I think, like you were saying, that was a core issue for the Panthers, and probably one of the main reasons that they were, targeted by the feds, because that was going on with the Vietnam War and the Cold War. They didn't want that, those ideas spreading to working class people and negatively racialized people. Those are the people whose bodies they use, to fill the ranks in their war. Most of the officers come from, upper class families, usually, upper middle class or wealthy white families most of the time. But the rest of the, soldiers, they need those working class people. So they don't want that message spreading. So yeah, that was kind of like where I got a lot of my motivation. But it was weird because as I was getting involved in anti-war activism, I have a lot of members in my family who have been or were in the military. My dad was in the military during Vietnam, and he became a conscientious objector, and so he had been actually straitjacketed and force fed because he refused to, like. Wow. At one point he just said, like, he actually stripped naked, and he just like refused to take part in like the machine. And they put him in a military hospital in San Diego. He's only actually told me the story once. It's kind of like, if people don't want to, it's something that you don't want to remember. You don't ever want to think about again, right? If you
that's the trauma
like that.
Yeah, we talk about that a lot on the International Leftist Coalition panel. I can speak on this on behalf, because I'm part of the Black community. I talk about the trauma that comes from police violence, and I always want to make the connection between the police violence that we see in America and the state violence that the United States government inflicts on people in the global South, in the Middle East, as well. It's the same. It's rooted in the same ideology. Fueled by capitalism, and it's responsible for mass death, mass trauma, and that trauma is not really discussed a lot. So it's important that you bring that up as well. So I'm glad that you do that.
And the way that our two-party duopoly works is that the Republicans want to, like, don't talk about any of that stuff. The Democrats, sometimes they'll talk about some small reforms to the police, or they'll give kind of some side speak to like BLM. But they don't want to talk at all about the military industrial complex and all the regime change wars, and sanctions, and the mass targeting of civilian populations. And so sometimes it's like they're kind of forced. They have no choice to talk about some of the things that people in this country actually see. But like when it's going around the world, people's views on it, the only way you can learn about it or understand it is through the media. And so you can just completely like misinform people about what's going on around the world. And so I think, like what you're doing, it's like the most important thing to connect, since we're the most powerful empire in the history of our species, right? That's what I always tell my students, like you can't just think about, the U.S. isn't like a normal country. Like, you can't just think about things as like this domestic situation we're in. No, it's like we're like everywhere on the planet. Like we had like a democracy promotion program in like Mongolia, where we're like influencing the elections in Mongolia. It's like it's crazy, man.
The CIA has been invested in so many elections over the last few decades, and I had a conversation. I asked a lot of my friends who was to my left. I always ask them, like, why are you so loyal and apologetic for a lot of the other countries like China and the DPRK? And they're very honest, like, because these are the countries that are fighting against the U.S. empire. When you see people that are defending Maduro and defending Venezuela, it's not like we are just giving them a blind stamp of approval. It's just important to stand in solidarity with those people, because these are the countries that are fighting U.S. empire. That's why it's important to stand with Evo Morales as well. Like, that's if you take everything in the guise of fighting the U.S. empire, that helps you view foreign policy in the correct way. And you see that with the struggle and fighting the apartheid state of Israel. And that's why, once again, the vote that they have for the Iron Dome is indefensible, because the alliance between the United States and Israel is awful, because they're the only two countries that voted to block releasing the embargo in Cuba, for example. So these are honestly just the straight up evil that we need to be resisting. And I'm gonna dive in that very soon. But you got anything you want to add to that, Jeb?
No, I agree. I think there's two things there. One, I don't I don't trust most Americans to have like a understanding of like the concrete reality in these countries around the world, because where are they getting their information from? So like I have friends who have been, known for a long time, who have good politics on the vast majority of things. But like when they look at certain countries around the world, like for example, Nicaragua right now, when they look at like the concrete reality, they're like the sources that they cite that I see them utilizing, they're so like they're so biased. And I'm like, why are you have you spent much time there recently? Or like are you sorting like, can you show us like, anti-imperialist and like, non-corporate sources you can cite? Like there was a opinion poll that came out recently in Nicaragua, and it showed like overwhelmingly the support for people to vote for the government that's in power, for it to remain in power. And I know there's a lot of contradictions there. The country, it's like emerged in capitalism. There's sweatshops there. There's all sorts of issues, police brutality, everything. But like, I'm here in the United States, like I'm going to spend my time trying to like amp up like a demonization campaign of a country in Central America. Why we can't even hold our own officials responsible. Why are we going to spend our time doing that? Right. And they ignore all the sort of like, gains that have been made in these countries, even with the contradictions that exist. Right. Like if you read the Via Campesina reports on Nika, or, and this is just the case in so many countries around the world, like there's this sort of this popularity always right on the left of, what we might call third campism, where, they say that they're against U.S. imperialism, but that they also see like China or Venezuela as like equally bad or something. And it's just, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. The U.S. is a global empire. China hasn't. When has China invaded, or when are they invading a country in the Middle East, or doing a coup in South America?
Military bases compared to their one. So go ahead, Jeb. I just want to put that in perspective.
Yeah, no, man, I agree. And it's been interesting doing this protest, this disruption of Bush, because a lot of people have tweeted out that usually would never look at anything I wrote, or wouldn't even respond to an email, probably, right? Like this guy Mehdi Hassan, like he put out a tweet that got like 4,000 retweets of the video of me disrupting Bush. And it's just like it seems pretty opportunistic to me, because these are people that like they never said anything about timber sycamore when the U.S. I mean, the CIA they were seeing $1 billion a year in weaponry onto the Turkish border that they were distributing to sectarian militia groups in Syria. Now that doesn't mean that that like they would immediately call you, oh, you're an Assadist because you're bringing that up, right? Like they immediately try to smear you. Like I don't speak Arabic. Like I'm not going to make my, I'm not going to, take a strong position on the internal, dynamics of the Syrian political scene. But like, dropping $1 billion in weapons from the CIA. I mean, do these people know anything about the history of colonialism? Like these are post-colonial societies. I mean, this like if you look at like the Saddam Hussein, like these, guys that were in power that I'm sure did a lot of bad stuff out of police state apparatus. The government is more than just Saddam Hussein, right? There's there's all infrastructure, there's roads, there's, people taking out the trash, there's like hospitals, schools, all these things. So when you target one of these governments, it like lays ruin to all of this. Like it was in Libya, when they did that intervention in Libya, there was a NATO website. I think they took it down now, but every day they had a PDF where they would show like each drone strike and like each sort of like water infrastructure and like building that they hit, and you could like see it like blow by blow. And it was they take down the infrastructure of a society, and to me it's just it's like totally disgusting, so.
Well said. And this is why education and reading theory, this is why that's so important, because you talking about how propaganda can take hold on people, and the pro-war propaganda has been so strong that it even affected a lot of people on the progressive left. They don't even realize it. The people who claim they are anti-imperialism, but they repeat CIA talking points uncritically. This is the same crowd, just to lay out one example, that will they will put Russiagate, for example. Yeah. These are the kind of people who will follow Juan Guaido on Twitter.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to say names. Yeah. I'm just saying these are the people who do that, and they're the people who are stuck in the same mindset that they were trained in through our propaganda. And when I shifted to the left, and once I started becoming aware of the propaganda, I had to toss out everything I learned, and that was something I did very early on, because we about to talk about George Bush more in detail here, because you are a staunch resistance to him. That's how I got my politics, because I was in high school. Actually, I was like around like 12, and I was like freshman year around George Bush, when at the height of George Bush administration. So my developing years was when George Bush was president, and I remember when everyone hated him, everyone hated George Bush, and then I never liked school. I never it was boring and it's stupid, and it's U.S. Education propaganda. So I never was like a good student, because
did you have one good teacher at least? I had one good teacher in high school.
Yeah. I had.
I remember I had one teacher in high school. I can't remember her name now, but she did a whole like bunch on the history of Africa. And I remember she did you ever heard of this, the Conference of Berlin, where all of the European powers came. They met in Berlin and they decided who would get what in Africa.
Yeah, that's when they carved up Africa. Yeah,
and so
I heard about that.
Yeah, and so I had this teacher. I think her name might have been Miss Harris. It was at Poly High School in Long Beach, and she had us recreate the Convention of Berlin in our class. We're like, okay, you could be France, you could be Germany, and then you guys are going to represent the people in the Congo that are coming to the. But of course, the people, the representatives of Africa had no say in how it was divided up. And so she did it was like a role playing game in the class. And I remember just like a light going off in my head, like, man, this is not right. So sorry, I cut you off. So
no, that's perfect.
Tell me about your experience.
That was perfect, because I did not have that teacher that actually sparked my interest until my freshman year in college, because U.S. education is so horrible. I live in a red state in the middle heart of America, and everything they taught me was garbage. And I learned that, and I talk about this many times on the show. Like, this is the kind of education they would teach me. They would say stuff like, "Hey, yo, Malcolm X was unreasonable. He was the bad one." They would whitewash MLK. They would say, "Oh, the Civil War wasn't really about slavery." Like, they would just, it was just nonstop propaganda. Wow. And I just hear this stuff, and I learned that stuff was false, and that kind of sparked my interest into being anti-establishment when I actually heard. And another example, I had to bring this up. When I was in high school, they were justifying the United States dropping nuclear bombs in Japan. They just straight up lied to us about it. They were like, "Oh, we have to do this to save American lives." They were trying to surrender. The war was over. They just wanted to test out the nuclear weapons. It was a crime against humanity that is unspeakable crime. But in our high school, they just justified it, like, we had to do it because we had to save American lives. Just to give you guys a few examples. So I'm like, dude, school is stupid. It's just whack. Now, if I had to take everything back, I probably would be a A student or whatever, so I won't be in poverty or whatever. But I wasn't interested in it. I had the one good teacher I had when I was in college. And the funny thing is, I don't remember his name. He was a history teacher, and I told you we had horrible history in my high school. So I actually had it was a big jump where they would actually tell a little bit more of the truth. And I'm I was learning stuff. I was like, what? And then after that class, that was only like one semester, and it was like an elective, because I was in school for computer science, so I wasn't taking a lot of those classes. Yeah. After that class, I was like, bro, I want to learn more about this fucking shit like this dude was talking about, and I started learning about history. I started learning about the history of war. I was fascinated about learning the history of the Mongol Empire, and that's why once again that led to me being anti-imperialism. I learned about all the war crimes that the Mongols did, like what the Japanese did in China, for example, what England did in India. Like I just kept hearing all these stories. I'm like, bro, this is the same shit that happens over and over again. And then you see the United States Empire is the modern day continuation of all that. Alexander the Great pretty much conquered his entire region, and now you got the United States Empire doing the same thing, responsible for mass death. So you study history because history gives you a good perspective of how you deal with politics in the modern. And I learned that because that one class. That's a long way to answer a question, but that one class, it was only for like 12 weeks or something like that, but it sparked my interest in learn, because I was like, oh shit, everything they taught me was bullshit. I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
were all your teachers white, or did you have any teachers of color?
Most of them were white, and then we had like teachers that was cool, I guess. Like teachers that was like good at bonding with students. But we didn't have no teachers that was like dropping knowledge on us. They all just reading the textbook. And I get it, bro. They don't get paid enough. They should be getting paid more. Like the teachers, we should be investing in. We should have an education system that transform people and make them able to be amazing teachers, for one. And then once we get that education system, we should pay the shit out of them and make it like, all right, we need elite people, and then that monetary incentive, like people push for that, and we need that. Because the way you should right now is a joke. Go ahead, Jeff.
You should go through your if you could find your transcripts and find the teacher you liked. And send them an email, because I gotta say, man, like I
feel bad,
man, because
I feel bad. I don't remember them.
I teach, and like once or twice a year I'll get like sometimes it won't come for a few years, but sometimes I'll get a couple a year where they'll like write me, and it's like a student from like I've been teaching since 2000.
What do you teach at? Or
since like 2014, basically. I'm like a freeway flyer adjunct lecturer. I've lectured at different campuses and stuff in California. And so, but every once in a while I'll get an email, and somehow the emails always come. It's like, it's weird. Like, if you go through some tough time in your life, you're like kind of feeling low, and then you get one of these emails and you're just like, it feels so good, because you think, oh man, like this, like they're like thinking about something we talked about like 3 years ago, that it's really nice to hear. So if you have a teacher that like opened your eyes, send them an email, man. It's really cool.
Yeah, and it's good that you're out there doing that and educating people, and that's what I try to do with my platform. This is my way of doing that. And if you in my generation, I talk to a lot of people around my age. I'm about 30 years old. And they have a pretty similar like route of radicalization. They was turned out by George Bush. They were tricked by Barack Obama, and then they had to go through a re-education process. What's very interesting now is through the age of the internet, you have the Zoomers that they straight up reject centrism. And what I mean by that, when you look at the Zoomers, you either have a hardcore communist Zoomer, or you have a hardcore right wing, like far right militia, like Kyle Rittenhouse, ready to die for the cause Zoomer. Like there's not a lot in between, and I think that because the free flow information, because my generation, the internet was a thing, but I didn't have a lot of access to it, and it wasn't nearly as big. During. Like we had AOL in my old house, and then we started getting better internet when I was around high school. But these people who grown up with the ability to freely flow information, they were able to push back against government propaganda like we never seen before, and that's why we see a lot more radical people, right?
Yeah, man. It's interesting to see like there are these sort of junctures in like the history of the U.S. political scene where you see, like you were saying, people got tricked by Obama, and people join with Bernie, and then they see, he's not living up to what he said. And so people, it's interesting to see these generations. Like I didn't get tricked by Obama because I was, I'm like 10 years older than you. So I'd been kind of watching it. And I remember reading like Adolph Reed, and like a lot of others that were like saying like, wait, hold up, like look what Obama's said here, like what he's said about foreign things like foreign policy, these issues, like before he got elected. So I was like very I thought it wasn't gonna turn out well. But yeah, man, like I think we're living through a historical crisis right now in the reproduction of our global system, with you see the wealth that's being accumulated by these tech CEOs that are flying their spaceships, that the phallic symbol spaceships up into outer space with like space tourists, and where we're headed for the working class around the planet. It's a scary situation, and I think we've got to fight it, with all our spirit and all our heart here in our country, because we see what it's doing to our brothers and sisters. Like that was one of the main reasons that I wanted to shut down and try to create chaos at that Bush rally, because I've been spending time with my cousin, and he got out of the U.S. military he got out like 15 years ago, and he's still just like day to day, it's a struggle just to, like I saw him a couple days before that, and he didn't want to leave where he's living with his mom and dad. He'd want to go outside with me, and it's just a lot of stuff, man, like personal stuff with the family, like going back and forth, living with different people, like
the real life consequences.
Like the violence you see, like in and out of jail, drugs, all that sort of stuff, So and it's really, I taught one of my favorite class I ever taught was I taught I teach sociology, and I taught a social problems class at Vandenberg military base. I was teaching at a city college up in I can't remember the name of the town, right near there, on the coast in Central California. And they said, "Oh, we have a class you want to teach at the military base." And I was like, "Really? I can teach like people at the military?" So I was like, I jumped at it, and it was all like, kind of, it wasn't officers. It was like low level people that were getting college. I had some bunch of MPs and, private first class, like these is like lower ranked people in the Air Force mostly. And the military, I guess some in the Army. And but I taught a social problems class, and I taught the class on the social problems of militarism. That was like it wasn't officially in the books, but that's what I made it into. And so we split the class into 3 parts, where the first part we did the domestic problems that are created by U.S. imperialism, and so we got to look over all the data, like the divorce rates, like the drug addiction, the homelessness, like all the different things with PTSD, like the problems with the Veterans Administration, the history of that, like how people had to fight to even get like veterans hospitals, right? Like people had to like occupy Washington D.C., like they like lit part of Washington D.C. on fire, and like it was just like after I think in the early 1920s. I don't remember the exact year, but there was like a whole struggle to get even money just for veterans. So
yeah, my dad's a veteran. He told me a lot about that, like the amount of fight that they had to do just to get the basic benefits. So we're a country of contradictions, where we send people to war, but like, yeah, we gotta support the troops. They claim to worship the troops, and then they send them to war, and they don't take care of them when they get back home.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, it's tough because like you always hear, remember the GOP was always like attacking the VA and stuff. It's like it's contradictory, because like I see like my dad going to the VA, and I see my cousin, and there's a lot of good people that work at the VA and they get good help. But at the same time, it's just like the thing that has been, this war machine, what it's done to these people. It's like it's like beyond, like you can't. It's like it should have never happened in the first place, And so we talked about that in the class. Then like the second part of the class, we looked at the effects on the populations and the countries that were targeted. So we looked at like, 4th, 5th generation people, kids in Vietnam being born with birth defects, like the effects of spent uranium in the deserts in Iraq. You know, if you watch that, what's the doc? You know, the great Australian documentarian. He has a whole documentary on that. His name's slipping my mind. You know, looking at the hospitals in Iraq and all the kids. And then the third part of the class, we looked at like the financial, like the lobby interests, like where the money goes, like why does this thing keep getting reproduced? So I didn't get invited to teach the class again. It was like a one time. It was like the syllabus was only used once, but that sort of thing was like, you know, having my cousin's experience and then being able to try to like meld it into a class to like, you know, that was really amazing. And so, yeah, all of that, just knowing about that stuff. And then I saw Bush was coming to speak. And so I bought tickets a few weeks ago. And, yeah, and then do you want to talk about what happened?
Yeah, I'm about to get the video up now. I want to thank the Pale Horse for a super chat because I think that's a great segment. Thank you for that. It's an honor to have Jeb on, and I saw this video, and this was going around. This was viral. I'm about to pull it up here. 1 second. And we don't watch the video at first, and then we're gonna react to it because I have a lot to say about this because I think this is very revealing about how our country is trying to rehabilitate and normalize the insane behavior of our bloodthirsty. I mean, I don't hold back. Like, I mean, what else can you call George Bush other than bloodthirsty, right? Him and his entire crew. But anyway, I'll shut up. Let's watch this 50-second clip. This came from Jeb. This is his Twitter. Make sure you guys give him a follow. I think I have a link in the video description as well. And he tweets out, here's a video of me shutting down George Bush last night. The wars he started in the Middle East damaged the lives of so many. He wasted trillions of dollars for nothing. Meanwhile, he made tens of millions in dollars in speaker fees. That's the massive corruption of our country. Let's dive into this video, and then I'm going to get your reaction, and we can discuss.
Okay.
So make sure the volume is good.
This is not the time for that, sir.
Now is not the time. That's very revealing, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Let's play that again.
When is the time? I think you have a little pop up on the bottom of your screen. I don't know if.
Yeah, I'm gonna hide it.
There you go.
I'm gonna hide it. Yeah, I'm gonna hide it so people that need to read the caption can. I'm gonna start the video over, but I preach a lot on Fred Hampton Leftists about we got to push back against civility politics because a lot of people who look at my critics and what I represent on Fred Hampton Leftists when I go on other shows, it's only tone policing. It's not a lot of arguments on terms of the arguments I'm bringing up, the people I'm holding accountable, because a lot of the people who are fast to criticize, these are also the people who are very fast to punch down. And they hold activists at a higher standard than they hold their average politician. Now, I am very, very lenient of my fellow neighbors and activists. I give them all the benefit of the doubt until proven otherwise. Meanwhile, if you're a person of power, I'm not gonna give you that benefit of doubt. I have no reason to. Meanwhile, a lot of these people have it flipped. So that's why I preach against civility politics, because you see it in this video. Do you have anything you want to add, Jeb, before I play this?
No, I think you're right on, man. And it's like there's certain times, you know, comrades and, you know, fellow activists might have like differences and debates within each other. But, you know, I think it's important to realize that, you know, if you're like a principled anti-imperialist, like, you know, we can come back together and get over those issues. I mean, so I think you know, it's important to try to heal rifts, but then there's also people, you know, that like you said, they're just interested in tone policing, and most of the time those people you don't see, they're not taking principled stands and positions, and you know, trying to shut this thing down.
Yeah, let's watch the video and I'm gonna give you a reaction. I'm not gonna stop it this time. I just wanted to make that point because I think that was very revealing when I first saw this. Now,
Yeah.
let's watch this.
Okay. Sir, this is not the time. This is not the time for that, sir.
Yeah, I did it.
No, it is disrespectful to the audience. No.
I like the guy's suit on the left.
Jesus.
It's a pretty cool suit, though, you gotta admit.
It's okay.
Imagine being this guy who his number one priority is to shut down someone speaking truth to power. Once again, I'm always interested in the way people think, right? We talk about the psychology of imperialism, the psychology of racism. I bet my good friend Dr. Kareem Patesh can write a book about this guy. The guy who is super quick to shut down the activists challenging George Bush. And the first question I'm going to ask you, I'm going to let this last 15 seconds finish, but I'm going to ask you when this clip finishes, like, what was the general reaction to people around you? But let's finish here, and then I'm going to get your thoughts on that.
Here's the thing in America. The good news is, in other countries, the guy would end up in jail for yelling at a president. Here, he's allowed to express himself, and I want to apologize for.
So I like how it ends. I like how it ends with you can hear me go to prison, and it cuts off at apologize. He actually went on. He went on to say, like, I want to apologize to the audience for this man for disrupting you and disrespecting you, blah, blah, blah. But the way it's cut off, you think, maybe he's going to really apologize this time, but yeah. No, so, I could talk about it. So basically, the people at this rally, these weren't like MAGA types that were going to like kick my head in, These were sort of like, it was a speaker series for sort of like New York Times bestsellers and like big politicians, like, the former British Prime Minister David Cameron's coming there on October 4th, 5th, and 6th. If anybody wants to protest that, the same speaker series is hosts all these people. They try to have some like, what's the name of the Afghan young woman who was shot in the face by the Taliban? It's like a big.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm blanking on her name too. I always forget these people's names, but
I know you're talking
about.
She's really been embraced by kind of like the global NGO community, and she's like on the speaker circuit, and she's giving a talk there. And so it's weird to see her face next to George Bush's face on their like brochure that they hand out. It just feels like kind of like dirty, but so the rally was sort of like kind of like wealthy professionals and sort of like readers, people, reading New York Times bestsellers. And I mean, it was like 98% white people, and old, it was like probably not many people below the age of like 40, probably just a handful, but there was 3,000 people there. If you have Mike Perisner's video, I mean, what he did was, he really went off. He's an amazing guy. Yeah, he's an amazing guy. You should show his video. And he was an actual U.S. soldier in Iraq. So maybe, do you want to, if you could find it?
Yeah, I'm gonna find it. And while I look for that, I'm gonna see if I can find a comment. There was a good question here, but the comments move so fast. I apologize if I missed it. Here it is. I found it. Optimism of the will. This is a good question. How was Jeb treated after being taken out? Mike Perisner, and once again, we about to find his video, said the security guys basically patted him on the back and pretty much thanked him. So do you want to talk and speak more on that?
Yeah. So when I was yelling, I tried to do like a live Twitter of it. Like I had my camera in my pocket, but I don't know if like somehow I touched it somehow by accident and it turned off, or if like they had some sort of system set off where it like blocked, digital videos or streaming, or so I don't know. So it turned off, so I didn't get the footage from that. But my only regret is I actually could have probably stayed there for 4 or 5 minutes and made it like really bad, and yelled a lot more. The issue was that there were some like very elderly people sitting next to me that had like walkers. And I mean, they looked like they were like, you know, in their 90s. I mean, they were really elderly sitting next to me. And so when I saw the security coming at me, I was like, they were kind of like rent-a-cops. It didn't really even seem to be Secret Service or even the Long Beach police. They were like all at the front of the outside of the building where there was a big demonstration against the war, or against the war criminal. And so all like these like group of rent-a-cops kind of came towards me, and so I didn't really struggle. There was like a guy pushing me from behind, and then finally one of the rent-a-cops grabbed me, and I was just, you know, I didn't like fight. I just walked out, and then but I kept yelling, and so that's why, yeah, it was about a minute long. And then when I walked out, one of the rent-a-cops grabbed my phone, and then there was another rent-a-cop who kind of like winked at me, and then I was like, give me my phone back and I'll leave. And then he took the phone from the other guy and gave it to me. So I think like he was kind of like sort of sympathetic, and so
that
then,
doesn't surprise me.
yeah.
That doesn't surprise me because it's like George W. Bush is not popular among working class people at all.
Yeah.
It's only the out of touch, like these people are in their MSNBC bubbles that they're thinking that, oh, people are like, oh, George Bush was respectful. No, that's only your bubble that are saying stuff like that. Everyone knows that he's a psychopath. So it makes sense that they was like, yo, I'm glad you did that. But I just had to do my job, man. I just didn't want to get fired.
So then they kind of walked out. And I mean, this place is usually used for like orchestras and stuff. Like we were in like the orchestra area where I kind of spent a pretty penny to get like a really good ticket because I wanted my voice to come up on his microphone, or I wanted him to hear me. And so then, they pulled me out, or I walked out then, and there was sort of like this little door, like kind of on the side of the like hallway, you know, when you exit the orchestra. And I was like, oh, I just walked as fast as I could to get out there because I was hoping the LBPD, the Long Beach Police, didn't come and arrest me. So as I was walking through there, this lady came running behind me. She came out the hallway, and she's just like, fuck you, and like yelling at me. And she was like, I guess the Speakers LA that does the event, they sort of bill themselves as like a woman-owned small business. And sorry, my dog's down here. And so she was like really upset and running after me and saying, how dare you disrupt our event? And then she said, you should have emailed us this morning and told us you weren't happy about this. We would have responded. And I was just like, oh yeah, okay, I'm going to email you. And like, oh, dear Speakers LA, I'm not happy about you inviting Bush. Can you please respond to my concerns? Like that's what she wanted me to do. And so then I ran out and I was and then I kind of like went under the Terrace Theater. There's sort of these different levels, and I was outside and I was sort of walking, trying to get out. And then all of a sudden I heard like, it was like in the Blues Brothers, you know, where you hear like, hut, 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 you know, like and then I see like these like police come from like all like directions down like different ways around the building. And they're just like running at me, and they're like freeze, like you know, they're like really freaked out. You know, I think they were pissed off because this was the second day that this had happened, so I think they were maybe a little more pissed off, and they were upset that like, you know, they weren't near the president. Like I was really close to him, and so one of the guys. I think there were a couple. I think there were some stun guns. One guy, I definitely saw a stun gun come up like really like pretty, you know, he was like 6 or 7 feet away from me, and he's like, I'm going to shoot you with my stun gun. I'm going to shoot you with a stun gun. I'm going to shoot you. And I was like, dude, like, I do not want to get fucking shot by a stun gun. And so I was like, I'm not going to resist. Please. I'm like, don't shoot me. Don't shoot me with your taser. Or no,
that guy played.
Or no, he didn't say stun gun. He said taser. I'm going to tase you. I'm going to tase you. And I'm like, no, please don't. I'm like, don't tase me. Please don't tase me. Like I'm just using my voice. I'm not going to fight. I'm not going to fight. Don't tase me. And so then I did not want to get tased. And so then they're like, okay, put your hands on your head. And they cuffed me. You know, you guys know what it's like to get, you know, a lot of people have been cuffed. It's like, you know, those plastic cuffs. And so then they were just kind of questioning me, you know, where do you work? Like, blah blah blah, like, where do you work? I'm like, oh, I teach a class, teaching at UCLA. I'm teaching a class there. And then they're like, where do you live? Just shit like that. And so then they took me, and so as they were walking, I was like, had a lot of adrenaline, and so I was like, hey, you guys have family in the military? Do you know what it's like to, have to take care of people that have been like, psychologically like completely traumatized and wrecked by these wars that this the Bush carried out? I was like kind of saying stuff like that to the police as they were leading me to this like kind of like expensive looking armored van where they opened up this like sort of metal I don't know, like it wasn't really a door, it was like a hatch, and then they put me in there, and it was like kind of like a metal box where I had to like sit with my knees up. I don't know if any of you guys have ever been in one where you have to sit like that. And they just, I don't know if it was like a half an hour or 45 minutes or an hour. I can't, the time passes quick when your adrenaline's running. And so they just put me in there. They took all the stuff out of my pockets, asked me if I had weapons, all that type of stuff. And then, so I was lucky, man. I'm so happy that, I've been arrested once before for a protest. And I was like, I thought maybe it would happen, but it's too important not to disrupt it.
Yeah, I want to address the super track, and then we did play that video. Thank you for the $5, Matthew. He said, "Thank you for doing that. We can't let them rehabilitate war criminals peacefully." And I told you guys, I'm going to be railing against the George W. Bushes, the Joe Bidens, the Anthony Blinkens, the Barack Obamas, the Nancy Pelosi's for the rest of my life. I'm gonna be honest. I'm gonna be that old guy on the porch, like the fucking war criminal boomers. You kids don't know about the evil of George Bush, man. I'm telling you, you don't know about Dick Cheney.
Yeah, we'll have no hair, just a little bit of gray right here. And we'll be like,
yeah, I'm just saying. People like Grandpa Nick. God damn, he back at it again, talking about the Iraq War. We heard you. We heard you about it. He talking about police violence again in the 2000s. Yeah, we get it, Nick. We get it, Grandpa. So anyway, that's gonna be me.
Let me tell you that. Let me tell you the funny ending though. So like after about 45 minutes, the metal door swings open and out of that box, and they're like, okay, you can come out, and it's like kind of hard to get out because you're like scrunched in there. And then there's this real tall police officer, and he kind of looks at me and he says, "The president has decided not to press charges." And then so in my head, I'm just thinking, man, that's a line I'm never going to hear again the rest of my life. Like no one, like wherever I am, I'm never going to have anybody say to me, like, the president has decided not to press charges. And so then, but that's good to know. So that means you can disrupt him. Other people can disrupt him. And he said he's not going to press charges because he says that's the American way. You can yell out like this and they're not going to press charges. So, hey, everybody feel free, go at it. He's not going to press charges, as long just don't, I don't know if I've got a lot of people on my Twitter saying you should have thrown a shoe, or like, why didn't you throw a shoe? And I'm like, I'm sort of second guessing myself on that too, but that might've got charges pressed. So,
you still got the message out there, right? So, the shoe will, I will always be grateful for the person who threw the shoe. But as long as we challenge power, and as long as we get the message out there, because I saw that this video was going around. I'm glad people saw this. I'm gonna show the video from Mike Perisner.
Yeah.
And let's check out this one. I want to get your reaction to this one as well. Let me start from video from the beginning. It says Iraq War veteran Mike Perisner publicly calls out U.S. President George W. Bush, accusing him of lying about weapons of mass destruction and causing the deaths of 1 million Iraqis. So let's see what he has to say.
Mr. Bush, when are you going to apologize for the 1 million Iraqis that are dead because you lied? You lied about weapons of mass destruction. You lied about connections to 9/11. You lied about Iraq being a threat. You sent me to Iraq. You sent me to Iraq.
As far as I'm concerned, he is behaving himself. You see how to say it? I thought you said he's going to be
powerful, man, dude. It's so powerful. It's like emotional. It's emotional watching this, like,
yeah.
It's strong. Yeah.
I rewind it a little bit now. I'll let it finish.
You lied about Iraq being a threat. You sent me to Iraq. You sent me to Iraq in 2003. My friends are dead. Joshua Castile. You killed people. You lied. You lied about WMD. A million Iraqis are dead because you lied. My friends are dead because you lied. You need to apologize. Apologize.
The comfortable bourgeoisie class is not happy about that. When I was looking at the reactions of the people in the background, and to show how depraved these people are, and I pass it right to you, Jeb. Remember when George Bush was speaking not too long ago, and he was kind of joking about the fact that, like, oh yeah, I lied about weapons of mass destruction. He, and then the crowd laughed. This show how morally bankrupt these people are, because this is serious. Look at the emotion in his voice. That is real. Like that is real trauma that those people do not want to hear. They want that to be out of sight, out of mind. They only want to benefit from U.S. imperialism. They don't want to see the actual effects that it have. Mm-hmm. And I'm also very interested, and this is coming up very soon because I host International Leftist Coalition panels. I'm going to talk to a lot of Iraqis as well, because there's a giant amount of trauma that's going on in their community, and I want to make sure that they are heard in this discussion as well. And that's why I want to start this International Leftist Coalition, so they can share their trauma as well, so people can wake up and realize the evils of U.S. imperialism and how gross it is for you to be trying to rehabilitate George Bush. Now, with that said, I'll pass to you, Jeb. What's your reaction to that video? Anything you want to add on?
Dude, it was like it was really powerful, man. Like, I'm so glad they got that on record, on tape. He's an amazing guy. Everybody should watch that, man. It's like from the soul. Like he's had a couple friends that have died, after the war, that, from, the things that, the PTSD, all the things that people engage in to try to forget what happened. A lot of these guys are coming back wrecked. But at the same time, he's not just talking about that. He talked about the 1 million Iraqis, probably a lot more that died in that war. And one thing I really liked too, that he said in one of his messages, was he said, this isn't about me. Like, this is I'm glad to be on your podcast, but I don't care. Like, if people don't like, I don't care if my name is connected with it. Like, this is real, like millions of people are dying. Like, our families are like wrecked. Like fuck this guy. He should never be able to give another speech. I know he's just one piece of this giant puzzle, and he's no longer president. But it's like with Henry Kissinger. You make an example of these types of people, and then it puts fear into the hearts of other people that want to do what he did. Other like careerists, opportunists, elites, that are gonna get to power on the backs of everybody. And I was reading something about, I think it was like Nixon or one of these presidents, or they were looking through their presidential library, and they were showing how like they like really feared. They had like they were worried about the anti-war movement, like on a personal level. Like they had like fear about it. So I mean, they need to like, we need them to fear us again. Like we gotta be doing things like it, because I'm all for doing protests and demonstrations like on the street, but like they can just sort of, if that's all we do, then they can just fence you off and just ignore you. And like,
hey Jeff, all we gotta do is vote for the Democrats in 2022, right? All we gotta do is just organize and vote blue in the midterms, right? That's how we get out of this, right? That's what people really believe. So we talking about the evils of George Bush, right? And it is very important to understand the trauma that he's responsible for, and the reason why, in a sane society, he should be afraid to leave his house. Let's be real. This man is responsible for an insane amount of crimes. But at the same time, people wonder why I have an unapologetic disdain for Joe Biden, Anthony Blinken, because the same war we were talking about, the Iraq War, they
Mhm.
played a very pivotal role in starting. And
Mhm.
I definitely want to bring this up before we wrap up, because I think it's important, because everyone understand, and you did an amazing job calling out George Bush, and everyone understand that that's the one that is worthy of calling out.
Mhm.
But when I say I could not vote for Joe Biden, knowing that he's gonna have Anthony Blinken in a position of power, they think I'm unreasonable. And I'm gonna read this off real quick, and I'm gonna give your opinion, Jeb, on what I'm talking about here. Let me share this, because I've been paying attention to Anthony Blinken, and I have been covering his record extensively ever since he reemerged in public spotlight, because he's been a high-level Democratic Party foreign policy operative for a very, very long time. He played such a giant role in getting the United States into Libya, and the Barack Obama and Joe Biden administration destroyed Libya, turned to a failed state, turned to a slave state, and this is what Anthony Blinken is known for.
Mhm.
The Secretary of State, Biden is choosing a longtime foreign policy advisor who frequent support for U.S. warfare include pushing for disastrous 2011 military intervention in Libya. This is the person, and then this is the guy who was on Sesame Street, by the way. They had Anthony Blinken, the guy who created a slave state in Libya, a failed state in Libya. He's on Sesame Street. Hey kids, here's Anthony Blinken. This is how disgusting our country is.
Can I say one thing about Libya?
Cut in.
Libya to me was also like it was sort of like an important lesson, because I was in graduate school at the time. I remember I was taking a class with this professor named Lisa Hajar. I was doing a sociology at University of California in Santa Barbara. Like it was just like really beautiful, like elite bougie area to grad school. And I was in this class. It was on sociology of law, and I remember all Libya was going on, and we were talking about a lot of international stuff. And there was this one point in time where the African Union stepped in, and they said that they were going to try to, they sent a delegation to Tripoli, and they were going to try to negotiate a peace, because there was this point in the war in Libya where the country was like divided in half between the Libyan government and the groups that NATO were supporting, these different sectarian militias and things. And there was a point where I think, was it Mbeki, or there was like, some heads of state of different AU countries went to Tripoli, and they wanted to negotiate a peace. And there was idea to negotiate elections. We were going to put down weapons. They were going to have elections, from, all these different, the different tribal associations and everything in Libya would come to the table. And in the class, I said, hey, we should, like, this is something that as leftists, like, we should get behind. Like, this means, less people are going to die. It's going to end the NATO intervention. You'll have different, there's different political forces in the country. They can take part in this. And people in the class, like, basically saw it as like, being a Gaddafi apologist, the fact that you wanted to like to stop this, like, this regime change war from happening. Like, there's like this weird there's this like escalationism within segments of the left. Like, they're so sort of scarred by the memory of Stalinism that, like, they see, like, everything through this like black and white lens. Every post-colonial country that we're intervening in, they're this like authoritarian state that if you even like say like, hold up, like, let's not escalate, let's figure out, a situation where millions of people aren't going to die and the society is not going to be turned to rubble. If you do that, then like you're immediately labeled a Stalinist, and like, the worst kind of Stalinist. And
you're a tanky, bro.
Yeah, they use that term all the time. And I'm like, no, I just don't want like millions of people to die. Like,
apparently, if you're not for the United States nuking the North Korean people, apparently you're a fascist. I hear that all the time, because I speak up for the North Korean people, and people will look at me like I'm crazy. And now think about it this way, guys: 30% of American people believe that we should nuke North Korea. Do you guys know how crazy that is? Think about what I just told you. 1 out of 3 Americans think we should nuke North Korea. A way higher percentage of them believe we should continue to sanction them. Now, think about the logic in this, right? oh my God, North Korea, this evil dictatorial state that is doing immense harm to their own people. So our response to that is to bomb and kill the people. How does that make sense? Or we should sanction and starve the people more because North Korea is not doing a good job with their people. Like, that doesn't make sense. And like Bill Bradley said, that's an insane number. And that's just an example. And the American propaganda will shame you for speaking on behalf of the North Korean people who are victims of U.S. imperialism. Just for example. But sorry, go ahead, Jeb.
No, I totally agree with you, man. And like what I say to people on Korea is like, what would you do? Like, okay, imagine you lived in a country that, 50, 60, 70 years ago, your entire country had been flattened. Like 119 out of the 120 towns were like completely flattened. Like there was like 2 standing buildings in like the whole country flattened. Like 30, 40% of the population is like living underground in actual like, dirt, like building tunnels underground and like caves underground. And 20% of your population was just, the civilian population was dead from aerial bombing. Imagine like that's the world that you live in. Like that had happened in recent history. That's like that's North Korea. Like 20% of their civilian population was killed by aerial bombardment in the war. So like this happened this is 1950s America attacking North Korea. Do you remember what was happening in the 1950s, like in the South? Like the experience of the black man or woman in the southern United States. How horrible that was. In places like North Korea, take that and increase it by an order of magnitude, where you have Stratoforce or bombers unloading thousands of tons of heavy ammunition on all villages and towns. That's like the lived reality of people in North Korea. So the history of how these countries, the movements that took over, that won these different struggles, their post-colonial battles, how the political groups had to organize like militaries and regiments to to win that struggle, and all the contradictions of that, and the what's happened since, and the how it plays out in this global globalizing world we live in. It's really a complex situation, and I just say you should immediately oppose basically any sort of like interventionist, like hard power, soft power operations that the U.S. is undertaking. You know our history, you know what we've done, where we're from.
You guys know I love to show my work. So this article from Vox came out June 2019. Americans are terrifyingly supportive of nuking civilians in North Korea. The new survey finds that a third, 1 out of 3, and there are millions of people here. Yeah. That's what 100 million people? 100 million Americans want to nuke.
It's totally crazy. These are crazy people.
Do you guys know how crazy they? I don't want to hear anything about China. Like, people will say, "Oh, North Koreans are propagandized." 1/3 of Americans want to nuke the civilians of North Korea. Yeah. Find me a country with a crazier stat than that. Oh my God, the North Korean people, they are so awful to their people. They have a dictator in charge, so we should nuke the people. 1/3, 100 million people.
Yeah, I mean, like, you look at if you look at the history of, like, when countries are under war, all sorts of like bad things happen like when a country is like under siege or under like a 50 or 60 year war, like the internal situation is like, there's resource deprivation. There's all, there's different problems that play out in these societies. And like, I mean, North Korea has been under like siege, like Cuba, these countries, they've been under siege for like, multiple generations, where like they can't trade, like they're cut off from international, financial markets. I mean, it's like collective punishment on a level, most Americans can't even imagine. I mean, there's like so many sanction regimes that have just occurred, like, that we don't even remember. Like Vietnam was under sanctions for like many decades after the war even ended. Like, we continued like the economic warfare on Vietnam. We don't do that now because we wanted to try to split them off from China, and Clinton made, economic overtures to Vietnam, and they have good trade relations now with the U.S. But there's this long history of economic warfare.
Yeah, well said, well said. And I think that's mostly. Oh yeah, I want to show this last passage from the article. Hold on, I think I closed it. We left off at Libya. I just want to show this last part about the complicity of Biden and Blinken when it came to escalating the war on terror. Let me find it here. There's a pretty long, extensive article that highlights, like, this article in general from Common Dreams is really good. Here it is. Here's the passage right here, because this article, actually, I'm putting in the chat. Why not? I'm gonna go ahead and put this in the YouTube chat so you guys can check it out. If you guys want to know how evil Anthony Blinken is, but check this passage out. Blinken is ready to be the administration's most influential figure on foreign policy. Now, remember this; they write this in the context that he wasn't selected yet, but everyone knew he was going to be the guy. It was pretty obvious. Bolstered by his long-standing close ties to Biden as staff director for Senate Foreign Relations Committee when Biden chaired the panel's mid-2002 crucial sham hearings on scenarios for invading Iraq. Blinken helped grease the skids for the catastrophic invasion. Now, when they say crucial sham hearings, what are they talking about? And I'm going to sum this up in a nutshell. When they did the hearings in order to justify the invasion in the Middle East, and what Blinken and Biden did, they stacked the panel with a ton of weapon defense contractors and a ton of people who was pro-war. They didn't give any opinions of anyone who was anti-war, and they heavily stacked the discussion in that direction. And once again, Joe Biden and Blinken was complicit in like doing that like American spirit job that was bipartisan, where it was like, if you're against this, you're anti-American. And they framed, like, the hearings were framed that way. Like, like, how crazy is that? So Blinken and Joe Biden was the propaganda puppets of George Bush. If you're wondering why I'm talking about this is why I'm bringing this up. And these are the people that are in charge now. This is why I continue to have awareness about the crimes of Dick Cheney and George Bush and what they did. It still relates to today, because that's why they're rehabilitating George Bush, because there is a neoliberal establishment consensus that the Iraq War and the invasion of the Middle East, the America getting involved in other countries and destabilizing that's okay. And that's why they're trying to rehabilitate George, because they're like, maybe not that bad. No, he is. Now, I want to get your last thoughts on that, Jeb, and we can wrap up from there. Anything you want to add on to that?
Yeah, I would just say I agree with you. It's like it's a two-party duopoly, right? What was the old George Carlin, statement? Like, it's a big party and we're not part of it.
Dude, I unironically learned a lot from George Carlin. Like, during my more liberal-minded days, I heard George Carlin. I'm like, fuck, that's a good point. Like, unironically, I'll admit it, but he was one of the people that made me look more into it, right? But anyway, sorry, go ahead, Jeb.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't know what else I could add. I mean, we've gone over a lot, but I think I'm just so excited with so many young people getting involved. It's like, it feels great. And I can tell with my students, like the students I'm having now, that I've had recently, you just see like the general sort of perspective of people has really improved a lot, or they're more like open to, things become, they see it more clearly and quickly what's going on. And I think like I saw there was some reports where the Pentagon is worried about war wariness on the part of so much of the population. And so I think we're going to see a lot of attempts through entertainment and things to try to bring people back into the fold. Right. I mean, I'm glad that Biden left Afghanistan, but at the same time, I mean, I think he was basically forced to. Like, they lost that war, that the whole thing was collapsing. And it's interesting with our media, the time where the liberal media loved Trump was when he bombed Syria. And the time when the liberal media was upset at Biden was when he left Afghanistan. So it's so clear. It's so clear what's going on. And I'm so glad that you have your show. So on Twitter, I do a lot of like political posting and stuff. But I wanted to do one other thing. Hold on a second. want you guys to say hi to my dog, Charlie.
Hey Charlie, how you doing?
This is my dog,
Love dogs.
Charlie.
We love pets here. I'm mad Liv not here because Liv always go crazy when she see people.
He wanted to have a little cameo.
Love to see him. Love to see him, and I greatly appreciate you coming on, Jeb. You brought a lot of great perspective here, and it's funny you brought up how America lost the war because like we always lose like these war like campaigns. Like we America officially lost the drug war. Drug wars won that battle, and terror won the war against terror. So whenever you hear these propaganda slogan campaigns, you should be immediately resistant to that. But your perspective here was greatly appreciated. There was a great conversation, and once again, we would love to bring you back and your insight, especially when it comes to foreign policy. Once again, I host international leftist coalition panels, and I truly believe that we need to start having conversations about having an international left, where we challenge United States empire, capitalism, the prison, military industrial complex as a united front. Because if you look at other countries, if you look at the protests that are going on in Colombia, if you look at what's going on in Brazil, if you look at all these states that the United States support, it's kind of the symptom of the same disease. And if you look at the UK, them rolling back like their national healthcare system, like this is the same neoliberal front attack on all our societies. I talk about my perspective and how our communities are hit hard with it on FHL a lot, but it's happening all across the world right now. And we got neoliberal administrations in France. You got Macron. You see the authoritarian crackdown in Australia right now that the gray zone been covering a lot. But so my point is, we gotta have you back on. We gotta continue to have these discussions. I enjoy these, and make sure you gotta check out the international leftist coalitions. Last word, anything else, Jed, before we sign off?
Bro, it's really nice to meet you, Nick. I appreciate you having me on. I'm down to come on anytime. Thanks so much. Yeah,
thank you guys.
Solidarity.
Thank you guys. Thank you everyone for watching. I'm also going to be on Jimmy's shows tonight as well. So make sure you check me out on there. Thank you guys for watching For Hampton Leftists. Support us on Ko-fi, forhamptonleftists.com. Take care.